All right, I finally got around to taking a look at the AstrHori XH-2 light meter, and it's not bad. I'm going to give you my impressions. And cute little box, open it up. Instructions in Chinese and reasonably well translated English, though far from perfect. Here's how the thing works. First of all, take it out of the box, turn it on by pressing this button. It creates a display here. It does not take a battery, rather it recharges via a micro or mini USB over here, and then a regular USB outlet here. Charges up pretty quickly, and it holds a charge rather well. At least, it's fairly new, so that's what I would expect. How that's going to last over time, I have no idea. All right, so press this button to wake up the display. The display is going to go off after about 10 to 20 seconds, and that puts it in sleep mode. And according to the instructions, if you just don't touch this thing for several hours, I think 3 hours, it will go into shutdown mode. So there's no off button. It just automatically shuts down after a period of time. First it goes to sleep, and then it goes to hibernation or something. Now, what we've got here is a set of numbers. On the top, you see an EV scale. These 3 bars indicate battery charge. If you got 5 bars, you got a full battery. So I've got 5 bars, it's a full battery. This is recommended shutter speed. This is aperture. On the bottom, that number is the ISO number. Right now it's set to ISO 400. This little recirculating symbol means that the device is taking light readings in real time. So you see, as I cover the sensor or the lens with my finger, you can see the recommended shutter speed varying with the light level. So the indicator is pointed next to the aperture, which means that's the one that the photographer is selecting, and the meter is going to recommend the proper shutter speed. So the shutter speed changes, aperture stays the same. Okay. If I want to reverse that and select the shutter speed and vary the aperture, then I press the button twice. There. So now the little pointer is now pointing at the shutter speed, which currently is 1/200th, although that is adjustable with the dial. So 200, 160, 125, 100, 80, 60, 50. So it is adjustable in 1/3 stop increments. All of these settings are adjustable in 1/3 stop increments. So 25, 20, and the lowest shutter speed is 1.3 seconds, 1.6 seconds, 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 13, 20 seconds, 25 seconds. Whoop, there we go. So 30 seconds is the longest shutter speed, and the quickest shutter speed it's calibrated for is 1/8000th. So from 30 seconds to 1/8000th of a second, pretty decent range. All right, double click, and the pointer moves down to the aperture value. Lowest aperture value is 1, highest is 32. So again, pretty decent range from 1 to 32. Again, in half stop increments: 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, f2, 2.2, 2.5, 2.8, and so forth. I was using it on f2 earlier today. Now, to get to adjust the ISO, you do more than double click. Double clicking just moves the pointer between the aperture value and the shutter speed value. And you notice here also, this is a letter A indicating aperture, though that doesn't really tell you anything more than the pointer does. The pointer is pointing at the aperture value. The A means aperture value. That's kind of redundant. Double click, we move up to the shutter speed, and we have a T here for time value. So that pointer and that T are giving you the same information. And if I want to set the ISO, I double click and hold on the second click. So hold, and you see now the pointer moves down to the ISO. And I can set the ISO, it's currently set at 400, 320, 250, 200. So you see it's adjustable in 1/3 stop increments. And the lowest ISO is 50, 40, 32, 25, 20, 16, 12, 10, 8, 5, 5. Lowest ISO setting is 5, and the highest is 6,400. So again, pretty nice range. Again, a variable in 1/3 stop increments, and to my knowledge, it is always variable in 1/3 stop increments. The instructions don't indicate any ability to set this meter to half stop increments. I think it will always show information in 1/3 stop increments. All right, so I'm setting my ISO. How do I get it out of ISO setting? Just click this once. And it goes back to T time value. Okay, so aperture. Now, it will give when that recirculate. And I haven't figured out what makes this turn on and off. But if you see the recirculator symbol here, it means you're getting real-time live readings. Again, as you see, here we go. You see my finger moving across the lens or the receptor. It's varying the F number. That's a real-time live light reading. So what do you do if you got this thing on top of your camera it will mount on a accessory shoe attachment, and you want to hold the light reading because it's pointing where your camera's pointing. So then, as you're taking the light reading, if you're on live reading mode, you simply click once. Click once, you see this symbol appear. That symbol is a padlock, and that means the reading is locked, and that's going to stay on for just a few seconds. See that? Just a few seconds, and the light reading is not going to vary no matter what you do. Okay, so here now the light readings will vary. Okay, whereas now it's gonna be locked for a few seconds. All right. Now there is another function which is I initially thought was useless, but I actually found a use for it. And here's how I found a use for it. I tested the accuracy of this meter by comparing it against readings of 3 of my best cameras. And those are this Nikon FM2, same lens. I just moved the lens from camera to camera, kept the lens the same, varied the camera. So standard Nikkor 50mm f2 was the lens I used on this FM2, also on my FM, and on the FE2. These are my go-to best cameras that have excellent light meters, and all the readings across all 3 cameras were consistent, and they consistently showed that the meter was overexposing by 1 stop. So I'm walking around going, well, doggone it, nice new light meter, and it's not accurate. It's overexposing by a stop. Isn't that a bummer? Well, then I kept reading the instruction manual and discovered that it has an exposure compensation setting. Now, why you would need an exposure compensation setting on an external light meter, I have no idea. If you can't add and subtract 1 or 2 stops from a light from a light meter reading in your head, then frankly you have no business shooting old-fashioned meterless cameras. But I did find a use for it, because if the reading's off by 1 stop, what can you do about that? Adjust your EV. So the EV setting is essentially, or the exposure compensation. Here's how you set exposure compensation. You double click and hold on the second click for like 3 or 4 seconds. Okay, so I'm gonna double click, I'm gonna hold, you're gonna see this little, the arrow go down to the ISO setting, and then after a moment, it'll move up to the, what says the EV setting here, okay? So device is on, hold on the second click, down to the ISO, keep holding, up to here. You now see a reading that says EC -1. Well, why does it say EC, exposure compensation -1? Because the light meter, when it was set at its default factory setting of exposure compensation 0, it was overexposing. It was consistently overexposing by exactly 1 stop. So how do you solve that problem? You set your exposure compensation for -1. Set the camera, or set the device rather, to underexpose by 1 stop. And now I'm getting good readings. Okay, so I set it to exposure compensation -1. I click this button 1 time, and I go back to my regular time value. Note that there is nothing in this display window which indicates that exposure compensation is off 0, that it's activated, or what the exposure compensation setting is. In order to do that, you have to go back to the exposure compensation setting itself. You have to do the double click and hold on the second click to go back to exposure compensation. Oh, now I can see, oh, it's set for exposure compensation -1. All right. Well, for my purposes, the exposure, again, you don't need an exposure compensation setting for an external light meter. It is, however, useful as a mechanism for calibrating your light meter, frankly. So, if I set it at exposure compensation -1, I now have an accurate light meter. Isn't that a neat trick? So yeah. So it's useful. The controls are not entirely intuitive, but it doesn't take too long to get used to them. And it's a good range of ISO, shutter, aperture, and it works consistently. So yeah, I think this little light meter is probably just as good as any other inexpensive, Chinese accessory shoe-mounted light meter out there. It is made of metal, so it has a nice solid feel to it. This, I think, can't tell if this. I think this dial might be plastic. I don't know. It might be metal, but it does have it's a nice solid feel to it. Also, check this out. So, as I was putting it on and off my cameras today, you can see the black paint is worn on these corners here and exposes brass. So it was made. I mean, it's made to easily show some brassing after slight wear, which is, well, it just so cool. Never mind, whatever. That's aesthetic. It's non-functional. Fine. Sure. So yeah, it's a good little light meter. And if you get yours and it's off by a little bit and it's not 100% accurate, use the exposure compensation function to calibrate the meter, and I think you're in good shape. So that is my opinion and review of the AstrHori XH-2. All right, and I'll put relevant information as I find it in the description. So check that out, and have a great day. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.